John Wadsworth, dude, welcome. Thanks for being on the Passion Project.
Thanks for having me.
I'm stoked to have you here. It's super fun. This is going to be really cool because this is a combination of some history and our history, because we go back a minute, and all the way through family, career, and the really cool stuff you do for the community and the environment. You're wearing the Surfrider hat. That'll be a big part of what we talk about today. So really excited, and it's fun. We were just having a quick coffee, and you mentioned something like, no. I don't know that. I want to learn that on here, because one of the goals of the Passion Project is to not only share the story, but my goal is always like, we're going to find a nugget or two that people go, oh, I've known John for 30 years. I didn't know that. So that's kind of the goal for today, if that's cool, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I really do. Listen, John, so by way of a quick intro, I kind of shared a little bit where we're going, but let me kind of walk through it real quick, and then we'll go into the questions and start having the chat. But we both live in Newport. I grew up here with your wife, which we'll talk about.
Easy there, pal.
Well, we all go way, way back. I mean, Shannon and I go back to junior high school, so we've known each other a long time. But you didn't grow up here, which we'll talk about. We'll talk about how you ended up here, because you grew up somewhere very different. More kind of sliding doors with us is you have 2 boys. I've got 3 kids. Your oldest and my oldest have been good friends for a long time, which is rad. So we'll talk about them, because they do some great stuff. Big water family, wedge family. Your kids, the boys, have some radical ocean exploits that we'll talk about, and kind of how that came to pass, and your guys is rolling it, which is neat. Talk about your career, and like I said, there's some stuff there you mentioned. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So that's always fun to uncover, and what you've been doing all this time. And then we're going to get into what you're wearing with your role in Surfrider for all these years. I commend you on it, and I look forward to digging into it, because it's really, really cool, and I very much appreciate what you do with Surfrider. You're also a really strong community supporter here in Newport Beach with the Junior Guard program, the Ben Carlson Foundation, 2 of the organizations that I love as well. So we'll talk about that. And then there's this angle of prone paddling that's becoming more of a thing in your family. And I always say it's not a paddling podcast, but there is going to be a segment on that here, because it's super cool. And in fact, we all paddled last night, which was super fun, and we'll talk about it. So very, very cool. So before we jump in, I have one funny question to ask. Do you remember how we met?
I do. Are you talking about the car ride to Mammoth?
No, I don't remember the car ride to Mammoth. Tell me about I don't know. Should we talk about the car ride to Mammoth? I don't remember this.
Well, you and I, this is before each of us were married. And we were both, there was a car leaving for Mammoth. I was with a female. You were with a different female. And it was a group of people.
Yeah.
But it was like this whole group of people that were going to ski for the weekend in Mammoth. And somebody was driving, it wasn't me. And I show up, and it's you. I think that was the first time I remember meeting you.
That's so funny. I don't remember that. But, there was a time where there was these 3 gals that were living together. I was dating one of them. You were dating one of them. And then our good friend,
that's it,
Ron and Jana were dating at the time. Yep. And they've been married ever since. But yeah, I met you through these women before we were married, just by chance. We were dating gals that were roommates. I think wherever the Mammoth trip came in, but that was just the interesting small world, because this is just post-college. This is probably late 90s, mid-90s, probably mid-90s. So we're talking 30 years ago. Holy schmoly.
That wasn't yesterday.
No, it wasn't. Well, very cool. Just funny, small town stuff. Okay, but that leads us into where we're going. So as I said, we both live close to where we're sitting here in the Newport Costa Mesa area. I grew up here. My wife grew up here with your wife. My wife, Randy, and Shannon have been friends for decades as well. You didn't grow up here. Where did you grow up?
Well, as I was just telling your crew, I'm a little bummed about the outcome of last night's game, because I grew up in New York City, lifelong Yankee fan. So last night stung. But yeah, I was born and raised in Brooklyn. And just an amazing, in the 70s and 80s. So if you've been back to New York City lately, it's a lot different than it was in the 70s and 80s. Some of the stories I had as a kid. My brother, I have a brother. My brother and I were these blonde-haired, tow-headed kids, and we stuck out like a sore thumb. We were 2 kids that were had our heads on a swivel whenever we left the house, put it that way.
Because it was pretty gritty.
It was
at the
gritty
time.
back then, and we lived in a neighborhood that was actually right near, kind of, if you know Brooklyn, right near the Brooklyn Bridge, called Brooklyn Heights, and it was kind of an up and coming neighborhood, and considered kind of the safe section of Brooklyn, but for two blonde-haired toe kids who stuck out like a sore thumb, man, it was an experience.
I can only imagine.
But I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, it was such a great upbringing. We were exposed to so many cool things. Not necessarily the ocean at that time, but I'll get to that in a second. But just an amazing, amazing urban upbringing.
I can only imagine. My cousin grew up in this. I've got a lot of family up in the Bay Area, and he talks about the grit and how he just loved the grit. Very similar story to you. Very, very different than growing up in the suburbs here in Orange County. But I love that. But what was why are you multi-generation New York? How come your parents ended up there? What was the history on that?
Yeah, no, my parents were not born there. They were from the Midwest and ended up moving there after they were married. They were married really young. And my dad took a job there in the city, and that's how they ended up there.
Gotcha.
And so, my brother and I and sister were born in New York, and, that's all we knew. But it's funny because, like, when I grew up there, I had a thick New York accent when I came out here, but because you're not multi-generational, it doesn't stick.
Oh, interesting.
But if you remember me from when I first moved out here, it's like, hey, how you doing? Let's go, Mark. Come on, what are you talking about? So it was.
I wish you had kept that.
After a couple beers,
right?
It'll
That's
pop.
so funny.
It'll sort of weave its way back in. But it didn't.
It didn't stick.
Didn't stick.
But because your parents were from the Midwest and not from New York, not being multi-generational, if your parents had that thick accent, you probably never would have been able to escape it. Is that kind of the?
It's if you meet the people you meet that still have it.
It's
that's the reason.
all
it's just ingrained in your DNA. Yeah.
And so you said you wouldn't change it for the world. What was it like growing up in that urban environment, gritty Brooklyn? What were you doing? School, sports? Like what was life like?
Yeah, I mean, we were street kids. Our playground was the street, and there wasn't a lot of organized sports like there is today. So you just went out and made up your games. I mean, we were on skateboard. We were on skateboard and bikes, just like you would be anywhere. But our playground was like, a typical day was jump on the bikes, ride across the Brooklyn Bridge, go hang out in Lower Manhattan.
Wow.
And try and stay out of trouble. I mean,
how did that work?
Well, there's a lot of stories I tell about the early days in Brooklyn. It's like you learned the bad guys from the good guys. You could just tell. I mean, the street. You heard the term street smart
for sure.
You learn that at a very young age, and it was like you'd leave first. We'd walk to school. My brother and I, you'd put the money that you would want
in your shoe,
in your sock to keep, and then you'd have a little bit left over in your pocket just in case anything went down.
So were you guys getting were you in scraps? You said your head was always on a swivel, and you had to be smart and safe, but were you in fights? Was it pretty tough or just a little bit more?
A little bit of that, yeah. Here and there, but you just you could avoid situations. I mean, you could see it coming if you were smart. But there was points where you couldn't avoid it, and you just had to engage. And there were some close calls. I'm not gonna lie. There were some close calls. Again, Brooklyn in the 70s and 80s was a lot different than it is today.
Can't imagine.
But again, it was just the life lessons that we learned growing up in that environment. I think my parents still to this day are like, can't believe we raised you guys in that environment. I'm like, what are you talking about? That prepares you for every experience going forward. I mean, you learn something that's going to help you through a tough situation, or just whatever it is. Dealing with people, traveling the world. Just being prepared.
So a little different than how your boys have grown up?
I'd say, a little bit of a massive 180.
Yeah.
you know, from the mean streets of Brooklyn to the mean streets of Newport.
Right.
But, you know, there's growing up today anywhere, there's challenges, you know, so not to say it was any easier here or there, but yeah, I mean,
Got it.
kids today.
And so were you there all the way until you left for college?
I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said you're getting on bikes, you're going across the bridge, you're hanging out. Were you playing any organized sports or doing any, you said skateboarding and biking, but was there anything that you were into at the time?
Yeah. So I went to a really, really small high school. We're talking like 60 kids in a class.
Wow.
Which is, you know, I mean, you look at
little
Newport
different.
Harbor, like 2,500 kids in the school, and you know. So I played 3 sports, basically because they didn't have enough guys to fill each of these sports. I played soccer, in the fall, basketball and baseball, and it was like, you know, you could barely scrap a team together because there just wasn't enough people, you know, in the high school. So from 9th grade through 12th grade, and I was a 3-letter varsity athlete, you know, through the whole career. And you know, I was okay at those sports. I wasn't getting recruited to go play after high school, but it was fun. I mean, you know, I said it earlier. It's like that was organized sports for us growing up. It wasn't like 5 and 6-year-old soccer.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
it's not like today.
Like you're just so programmed, kids these days, which to me is a little, you know, if your kids are into it, that's great, but it's a little bit of a shame too, just because you got to let kids be kids, you know, go out and figure it out, and you know, just have a neighborhood game, hang out with the neighborhood crew, and you know, go have fun, get into trouble. But yeah, so that was my organized sports was actually what it used to be.
And I'm a huge believer. I wish it was still that way, because when you put kids into their lane, whatever that is, whether it's around here polo or whatever sport it may be, those coaches don't want them doing anything else. No. Like, you're a one-sporter, which is really a travesty for kids. You want to expose them to everything as much as possible. So it's
for sure.
Super cool. And you got 3 letters. I mean, you're a stud. Who cares if it was because it was a small school size? It's really cool. Okay, but clearly you ended up a whole coast away. Was that intentional? Because now we're getting towards like college. Like, you're in high school. Did you have a vision for where you wanted to go, what you wanted to do? And maybe, I don't know, did surfing come into your life while you were still living in New York? Because the water's been a huge part of your life. Did that start then, or did it start after?
So yeah, we haven't touched on that. So we were growing up in the city. We were fortunate to summer out in Long Island. And so that was my introduction to the ocean, to the Atlantic. And so we would go to the area of Long Island. Long Island's big. It's 100 miles long, east to west. We were on the west end, which is like Rockaway Beach, Atlantic Beach, Long Beach. That was kind of where we would spend our summers. And those were back then, those were down and dirty beach communities. But that was my introduction to, you know, the ocean, to just what it was all about. Very few people surfed back there back then. I mean, it was like surfing was almost illegal in places. Wow. You had to sort of dodge the guards and the police to go surf with it, wow. Which sounds insane. But I mean, the waves would get good, and you'd literally have to, you know, sneak around fences, you know, to go surf. And it was, you were like...
Do you know why that was the case?
It was just, I don't think there wasn't a lot known about it. It was such a new sport. And, you know, back there, you know, the West Coast was exploding in the 70s and 80s, the surfing scene. But back then, we were playing catch up. And I think just the general masses kind of thought it was, you know, a bunch of derelicts, you know, just people that were going nowhere surfing.
That wasn't that far from the truth back then, though.
Probably not.
To some degree. Right. Yeah. My parents, being from New York, my dad grew up in Brooklyn as well, from New York and Ohio, they were not super fond of me getting super into surfing early, and kind of some of the riffraff that I was hanging with.
Well, and that's, you know, my parents, my dad especially hated the beach. Mm-hmm. He's like, you know, I don't want, you know, he wasn't supporting it. You know, you look at you and I and how we've supported our kids in the water. I mean, that was I had to figure it out for myself. You know, I had no mentor, nobody looking over my shoulder telling me what to do, what not to do.
But what was the allure? You just Did you see somebody out surfing there your first couple times and just kind of gravitated towards it?
That was pretty much, I mean, seeing, because on the East Coast in the summer, it's usually pretty flat. But so when you saw a proper swell and you saw people riding the waves, it's like, that is insane. It was like instant love.
Got it.
And
how old were you when you first kind of?
I think we were like, 10, 11-ish. It starts with the boogie boards, and then you graduate to a surfboard. And I will still remember my first board. It's like we always remember our first board. You remember your first girl, first board. It was at Atlantic Beach Surf Shop. They had their own brand, and my buddy and I, scrapped enough money together to go buy our first new boards, and it was just like the most amazing thing ever. And then it took off from there. I mean, I will say I was probably a decent surfer in my 20s, but I was never, it was just back there. When you grow up surfing the East Coast back then, you had 4 months probably to actually surf because the water got too cold, and the technology and wetsuits weren't great.
Yeah.
So it was a quick season, and then if there wasn't, that, and if you know the East Coast, the summer is not the wave season.
Yeah.
So it was a very slow progression, but.
Would you only surf when you were out on Long Island on the summers, or once you got into it, would you go from Brooklyn and go chase waves on the weekends or anything, or was it really just seasonal?
For me, the chasing waves didn't start until I had moved west.
Got it.
And became a better surfer and just more knowledgeable. And I mean, we weren't doing family, growing up, we weren't doing family vacations to go surf like we do.
Got it.
I mean, it was, so it started much later.
Got it. So that brings us probably to the first maybe pivot point. So you're in high school, was college always on the radar?
Yeah, college was on the radar, and actually, you're probably going to ask. I'll jump to the question because I know you're going to ask. How did you end up in California?
Well,
I'm sure.
That's part of the college question, I think.
And it was. So I was not looking west at all, and most of my family and friends were staying on the East Coast for college, and the story that I've told 1,000 times. So we're junior year. Thinking, you're as a student, you're thinking about where to go, and all these college recruiters are coming, and just pitching their schools. And this one day on the agenda is a school called the University of Southern California, and they had some representative that was going to show up and pitch the school. So California sounds good. Let's go check it out. So my buddies and I went to go check this. This meeting out by USC. Sure enough, the recruiter they sent looked like, our wives did.
Got it.
They're just like a
Our
Barbie
wives
doll.
do
Look, yes. And it was like, they sent this, Barbie doll looking, typical California, probably graduated 2 years before.
They played their card.
Oh my God.
Right.
We were hooked. We're like, does everybody look like you guys out in California? And so literally, that's what put USC on the map for me. And I went home and said, Mom, what do you think about USC as a school? She's like, yeah, sure, why not? She's never thinking in a million years that I would first of all, probably get in, but then decide to go there.
I just love that you told the truth. And it's not like, hey, USC had this great reputation for the real estate program, or they're in big or whatever. You're like, they just had hot chicks.
No,
it totally captivated me.
It was the hot ladies, and it was the chance to be closer to year-round surf.
So it was that junior year meeting with representatives from USC that changed your mindset from looking east or staying east to going, let's go all the way west.
That's not fabricated at all.
Wow.
And that's what put it on the map. But I did apply to other schools. Like I think we've shared, I grew up a big skier in my visions of going to ski collegiately. And the schools that I applied to I didn't get into. One of them was UVM, University of Vermont was like my first choice. And as fate would have it, they didn't want me. And
it's all
USC
ice
said
there
yes.
anyway.
It's all, yeah. I mean, can you imagine, Wadsworth gets into UVM and doesn't get into USC?
Yeah, life would have been very different.
Jesus.
Right?
Yeah, it would have been
very
vastly different. But
I'm glad you got into USC.
I'm pretty stoked. I mean, everything worked out well.
That's awesome. So let's go back because I forgot. I was going to talk about skiing later. So you just commented that you guys. So you were sounds like vacations with your family, summers on Long Island, but winters you were chasing snow. Is that right?
Chasing
as a family?
snow. Yeah, we did chase snow. Yeah,
Got it.
Did a lot of. Fortunately, both my parents were skiers. We spent a lot of time in the Northeast, driving to Vermont. I mean, Vermont was like our Mammoth. You know, it's just it's a similar drive. So it was a lot of weekends in the car, going up to ski. You know, you leave Friday night. I mean, I'm still like amazed at my father, and you know, he'd work a 80, 90 hour week, pack the car up on Friday night, 6-hour drive, Poland at midnight, ski all day Saturday, ski all day Sunday, and then pack the car up Sunday and back, and you know, back to the grind. But just, I mean, such a cool thing to have as a kid growing up. I mean, just, you know, the road trip, the family road trip, but also the skiing experience. And, you know, that's where we cut our teeth skiing.
Got it.
I mean, if you can ski the Northeast ice,
yeah.
you can ski anywhere.
For sure. Yeah. I have family that live right there and ski and snowboard right there. So I've heard a lot about, but that's a lot of ice. So yeah, if you can do that, you can do it anywhere.
Yeah, and then we gradually would, you know, go out west. I mean, and then you know, that was another draw to the West Coast. It's like you're used to these East Coast mountains that you think are big as a kid growing up, and then you can see the Rockies. Like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And you never want to go back.
So it sounds like your parents also instilled a bit of this travel kind of adventure bug in you.
Big time, yeah.
Because that comes into play, or that's probably never changed, which we'll talk about too. Yeah. Okay, so awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So let's go back to you apply to USC, you apply to New Hampshire, you don't get in there, and so you make the decision. Is it that simple? You get in, you're like, I'm going.
Pretty much. That was, I think it was. I was thinking, you know, if I don't like it, I'll spend a year out there, come back, transfer somewhere closer to home. But
I guess you liked it.
It was one of those things that I've told this story before. Like, you got off the plane, you're driving from, you know, the airport to wherever, you know, the coast. It's like, yeah, this is pretty good. I could probably stay here for a while.
And you were 18?
I was 18. You know, the other thing that you grow up on like, I was a super naive kid from the Northeast. I didn't know really anything about California. I'd never been. I applied sight unseen, got in sight unseen, never been to LA. And you just think, okay, everything in California is on the coast. But if you know USC is not on the coast, no. It's quite a distance from the coast. And I was sent out here without a car. They said, no car until you prove yourself. And so there's not a lot of subways in in LA. So
and if there was, you probably wouldn't get on it.
Right? That's how we got around growing up, was all public transportation. So now I have a car. I can't get to the beach. I really can't leave the campus because all I have is a bike or a skateboard. I actually had a skateboard. So it was just, scraping, rides from people that had cars to get around.
Was that just for the first year?
First year. Then I was able to, I maintained first year, decided I loved it. And actually the family car that we had, I bartered with my dad to, can I have the car, or can I have a car? He goes, well, we've got this car that no one uses. You can find a way to get it out to California. You can have it. And it was a Toyota Tercel. And so this is a side story, but I'll tell it anyway. A good friend of mine back there happened to be heading west to go move to Hawaii. And I'm like, hey, you mind driving my car out here? I'll pay for your ticket. If you can get it to California, I'll pay for your ticket to Hawaii.
No, that's a smart deal.
And he's like, yeah, sure. So he drove the thing cross country, shows up, at my dorm with the car, and that's how I got my car second year.
Awesome.
Yeah, worked out.
And did you live on campus or near campus, or did you ever move to the coast, the South Bay area during school, or were you on campus?
Always on campus. Yeah, was on campus. Dorm life.
Once you have the car, that
opened up a lot. Then you could, get get to the beach, get to the coast, go explore. Did a couple trips to Mex. Drove to Tijuana, which you're not supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
That one trip in particular. I didn't think I was coming back. I mean, when you drive to back then, you could, Tijuana was not like it is today, but you would never drive there.
No.
You would drive to the border, walk across.
Yes, we used to do that quite a bit.
Yeah, but we drove there.
Oh, wow.
Like looking for parking on Avenida de la Revolucion.
I can't imagine.
It's like
I can't imagine.
Idiot from the East Coast, So I was still learning my ways, but we did this amazing trips, south of the border, camping at K38 before there was anything there. If you remember those days.
I went to school in San Diego, and we did exactly. We were going the same places you were.
I mean,
probably having the similar experiences. 90% of the experiences were awesome. 10% were scary.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. In San Miguel, camping at San Miguel, but just
It's unfortunate our kids. There's still a lot of people doing it, and a lot of people that are really knowledgeable with local mechs would say that it's safe if you know what you're doing and you do everything right. But I'm not smart enough to know, and it's really unfortunate. I would not want my kids going down and camping local mechs with everything that's been going on.
I'm with you.
It's unfortunate because it's beautiful and the people are lovely. There's just too much bad stuff, unfortunately. Really, really unfortunate. It's such a cool thing that we got to do that because it's kind of wild. It's really, it was so cool. Such a cool experience. We were doing that simultaneously. I was going to school in San Diego, same time you were going to school in SC, kind of doing the same things, going to Mammoth, going to Mex, going out to Palm Springs or wherever, right? Good times.
Yeah, amazing times, yeah.
So you're at school. Educationally, did you have a direction that you were, like, did you know what you wanted to do, or were you developing that as you went through school?
No idea. Yeah, no idea. It was pretty much, how can I get the, sort of the broadest exposure to education with the with the least amount of effort.
The college experience.
I'll admit it.
Yeah, sure. All good.
And my kids are old enough, if they're watching this, they now understand.
Yeah, you've got two in college.
So
we'll talk about them
we're
too.
Good. Yeah, they've made it there. So, it was. I think and Shannon and I both agree. I mean, there's more to college than just education. I mean, the experiences, the people you meet, that's all going to shape, your path in life. And if you're just, head down in the library, that's great, but that doesn't give you, I think, the foundation that you're going to need to be, be a good human and a successful human.
For sure.
Going forward. So, experiences were important to me. I took advantage big time.
Well, you learn just the ones you talked about, going down to Mex and like life experiences. Like, yes, we agree. I back what you just said 1,000,000%. College is awesome, but it's a social experiment as well, and learning independence and to manage yourself and not do too many dumb things and learn how to navigate people. And yes, we're totally aligned on that. So towards the end of your college career, did you get any clearer on what you wanted to do, or did you truly leave school going, all right, I got my degree. I assume you graduated from SC, and you're like, all right, now what? What came next?
Well, first I had to cut my hair.
Oh.
Yeah.
I had to do that too.
I had long hair. Yeah. I had no idea what I wanted to do post SC. It was, I had lots of different ideas. Being an athlete, amateur athlete, I'd love to work in the sports industry somehow, some way. And I tried that for about a year. So I was bouncing around from internships, ended up working.
Sorry to stop you there, but what was the magic wand at that time? If I could have said, John, you just graduated USC, you can have any job in the world, what would it have been at that time in the sports?
Wow, that's a good question. If it was today, travel the world and someone pay me to surf amazing waves, and those are pretty good gigs if you can get them.
It's a big grasp, right? But what about you at the time? Like a realistic, like I want to go, you were talking about in going into sports. Did you want to be an agent? Did you want to go work for a ball team? Like if somebody could have said, John, I can give you any real job in sports.
Yeah. So my last year at SC, I interned for the management company that managed the Coliseum and the sports arena. Mm. So it gave me a pretty good exposure to kind of sports management and saw a lot of different things. But I think to answer your question, to work for a sports team and, in marketing, I had at SC had some classes in marketing. I thought that was something I would be interested in doing post SC, and some sort of sports marketing. And, I'd interviewed with, I'm saying it now, the Dodgers, who I really hate right now because they beat my Yankees, but interviewed with Dodgers, Lakers, actually the Raiders, worked for the Raiders for a short second. But then I got, and none of those jobs were paying jobs. You'd meet, they'd say, yeah, if you're interested, here you go.
You're going to grind for a year,
yeah, and not get paid. Yeah. And if you don't like it, there's 20 guys behind you.
Or 200.
Yeah, that will gladly take it. So, but I found a job at for the U.S. Olympic Committee, and I was with them for about a year, and it was. So back then, there was every 2 years between the Olympic events, there was what's called the Olympic Festival, which was kind of a proving ground, or it was a way for the U.S. teams to kind of bolster their individual sports and grow the sport, grow the team, bring more awareness to the sports, and so they put this event on every 2 years, and there was at the time there was one in L.A. and so I worked on the organizing committee for that Olympic Festival. This is probably like 1992-ish. And so I worked on organizing this event for everything from, just you name it, I did it.
Wow.
It was super cool experience. Loved it, but there was just nothing after it. There was, because the
festival's over.
The festival's over, your job's over. Tried to leverage that into some other career in sports marketing. And it was so impossible to break into that. And I finally gave up.
Interesting. So where'd you go?
Well, we talked about it earlier. That my first real job then after that was with the Gallo Wine Company. And so that's just a trip.
That sounds fun.
Wine. We're just drinking wine all day. It was I was hired in the chain division, so retail stores. A lot about retail stores. My hours were like 3 a.m. to 12 noon.
Well, you could surf a lot if you weren't too tired.
I had some free time, but it was usually dedicated to sleep. I lived with 4 guys at the time. I'd be getting up, going to work. They'd be coming home from the bars.
Yeah, right.
It was it was probably the most unhealthy period of my life because it was just,
yeah,
you're not sleeping well, you're not eating right, you're not exercising.
No.
But it was an amazing experience. Great training. They gave you a company car back then. Sales training. If you do it, anything you do in life or business, sales is involved, right? And they gave you an amazing, foundation for that. Their model's amazing. They just grind you for 6 to 12 months. Literally, the lifespan of an employee at Gallo at the time was like 12 months.
Wow.
I lasted a year and a half. And then that too was like, it came to its end. I have so many great Gallo stories for another time, but that kind of ran its course. And then like this, I can't keep doing this. It's going to kill me. It's because of the lifestyle. And so I actually quit before I had another job, which is something you're not supposed to ever do. Like, screw this. So I took a couple months off, took a deep breath, and then jumped back on the interview train. And at that time I had a bunch of friends that were in their commercial real estate was exploding back then, that industry. And so I had a bunch of friends that were in the business and just started talking to them and like, this is, great business to be in. It's not easy, but it was, it was the time when there's so much development going on, and it was a great time to get. I mean, timing's everything. And so I interviewed around and got a job at Colliers International, where I am. Been there now 30 years.
Good for you.
But just and that's what we skipped over is after SC, I lived in Manhattan Beach.
That's what I was going to, which is a very common move, right?
Yeah.
Graduate, SC, move to the South Bay. Okay, talk about South Bay living and then where that took you to, and then we'll get into current work.
So it was, I mean, after SC, I don't even know how, I mean, everybody moved to the South Bay. And back then, Manhattan Beach was this sleepy little beach town. Just such a great, instead of, going to school, working hard in school and playing hard, it was, you're out of school, working hard, still playing hard. So it was like just an extension of SC, and just an amazing couple years in the South Bay. I mean, I thought I was going to live in Manhattan Beach forever. But when I just mentioned took a job at Colliers, that was in Irvine, down here in Orange County. So that's what got me down here. I mean, I grinded the commute for 2 years and said, I can spend 90 minutes of my day a lot more productively if I move closer to where I'm working. At that time, I was thinking this is probably a career that I want to spend some time doing, because it was clicking, everything was kind of working. And so, all right, I got to make the plunge down to Orange County. And so left the South Bay behind, left great friends, great memories, still go up there a lot and see the old crew. But, got to Newport, landed in Newport in like 94.
And that's probably around the time that we met, not far after that.
Yep.
But that's a pretty common path from SC, graduate, South Bay, and then end up, I mean, where we live now is a pretty much of a haven of USC alums, right? In the Newport Beach area, pretty heavy.
The alumni network down here is significant.
What about in the Wadsworth house? What's it like there?
I married a Bruin, as you know, so we have the house divided.
Full house divided. That's for anybody that doesn't know, it's USC is a there's a lot of UCLA, et cetera, but USC is the prominent school that people like to fly the flags in Newport. So with the rivalry, that's just super funny. I mean, you guys are full blown house divided with UCLA and USC in the house.
And, I mean, funny. Shannon lets me know about it often too, that I went to the school that wasn't as superior as the school she went to.
That's so
and
funny.
That I had to go to UCLA to find a wife, and couldn't,
no lack of grinding,
lack of material there.
So
I mean,
that's
it was
awesome.
No, it's fun. There's one day a year that we don't see eye to eye.
What about last night? Or is she a Yankee fan too?
She's adopted to be
a
Yankee
Didn't
fan.
have much of a choice.
Yeah,
That's very funny.
Yeah, so she was, she know, and the Yankees. A quick side story. We got married in 2001 in October, and if you go back in baseball history and know the Yankees were really good in the late 90s through the early 2000s. So our entire wedding, lead up to our wedding, our honeymoon was a Yankees World Series run.
No.
So
Were you a little distracted?
Yeah, and she's like, "Is this going to happen every year?"
That's so
I go, "Well, as long as the Yankees are still good, probably."
That's
So it's been a while, but she's been a trooper. She supports me when we win, when we don't. Last night I was a little bummed, but it's all good.
She took care of you last night. That's good.
Yeah.
So you mentioned 30 years at Colliers International, which is amazing. Not a lot of people have 30-year careers. Probably our parents' day, it was more common. I've been at my company for 30 years. You've been doing it. It's not common. It's super cool. So what's been the allure, or maybe more like what's been the secret for you, A, staying in it, but B, being very successful in it?
Yeah, I mean, not to sound like an infomercial for Colliers, but it's the culture there. I mean, the people that I've been working with for this long has really made it fun. And, it's like, if you're not having fun with what you're doing, I mean, I know it's hard, early on, you're not going to have fun, whatever career you start, most likely. But it was I think the people's a big reason why I've been able to maintain at one company is, yeah, you're right. It's I'm an anomaly. I mean,
Yeah.
people move around company to company all the time now, and they almost look at you like, what's wrong with you? You know,
You're like, I'm lucky.
yeah.
Right?
I mean, are you loyal, or are you just not willing to, make a change, or which I think, there's something to be said about both of those, but it was just
A good fit.
a good fit. And then commercial real estate is a massive industry, and I don't want to bore people with what I'm doing, but I found my way into a specific niche of healthcare. And so, our clients are all healthcare related, hospitals, doctors. And so there's also this sort of thing, it sounds kind of corny, but we're not just doing real estate transactions, we're actually expanding access to healthcare. So it's kind of this, you have this extra reward of, okay, yeah, I'm doing this for a living, I'm getting paid, but I'm also doing a little bit of good too, to, help expand, better access to care.
Hallelujah. Good
So,
for you. That's great.
yeah,
I'd
it's been
read up
fun.
about it. Yeah, it seems so. You found this like niche within the commercial real estate world that's fitting for you, which is super cool. And again, I think you mentioned culture. Like I always talk about our business. How do you retain people? You better make it really good place to work. Our mantra is best place to work makes the best place to shop. Like that's culture. That's what keeps people around. So how cool to have. You could have ended up in a lot of different commercial real estate companies at that time to find that one. What a kind of fortuitous, cool opportunity.
Yeah, it was. I think I think Kobe Alter said it. It's like, if it's fun, it'll always work. If it's not fun, it'll never work.
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean,
that. Yeah.
it was just it. Yeah, I mean, if there's anything, that I can, I try to shape and mold my kids, the best I can. But if there's anything I tell them, like, doesn't matter, find your passion and make it happen. If you're making $1 million a year, fantastic. If you're scrapping together rent, that's fine. As long as you're happy and you like doing what you're doing. I mean, that's the key to me for success in life. And so, I've just been fortunate that I found a really cool opportunity early and stuck with it. And, now it's like, it's afforded us a great lifestyle and go, screw around whenever, a lot more. So anyway, it's been
awesome.
a crazy ride. It's still hard to say that I've been doing something more than half my life, working for a company.
Right?
I mean, know people at that company longer than I've known my wife, which is nuts.
Yeah, it is. I'm in the same boat. I mean, and it's, one of my favorite things to do is I write all the anniversary letters to all the folks that work for us, 25 years, 30 years, 18, like it's so cool. So kudos to you. It's really, really neat. And thanks for sharing that. So let's go into kind of Newport and the family. So you've been in Newport ever since. And as we mentioned, Shannon grew up here. And you guys met back when you were already living in Newport. Is that right? Is when you met Shannon? Yeah, because I met you before Shannon. So you must have met here.
Yeah, we met, the story is, the story of us meeting actually was at a bar in Mexico.
Oh, you're kidding.
Do you know
Where?
the story?
No, I don't. Where? What?
Cabo. I was on a bachelor party. She was on a bachelorette party. The Office, if you know The Office.
Sure. I think I know of. I don't know if I've ever been to The Office.
Sure. Yeah, right. Shoe line. And we're down there I'm literally, as a good buddy of mine, I could only make it one night. So I fly down for just one night, the last night of the party. Shannon's been down there for a couple days. I mean, just the whole story of us, both of us actually being there is still, that's a whole nother side of it. But we both are at the same bar, bachelor party. It so happens that a guy, one of my buddies, knew some of the girls, a local, both Newport-based crews, and a buddy of mine actually went to Scott Brownsburger. Do you know?
I don't.
Do you remember? He's a CDM guy. He was a tennis guy. But he knew Shannon, and he goes, Shannon, you got to meet this guy. And he's pointing, because I'm like one of the only single guys on the whole trip. And like 5 minutes earlier, we had all just gotten these fake henna tattoos. Oh. So I'm like all tatted up with these fake tattoos. And he's like, you got to meet that guy. And she's like, the guy with all the tattoos?
That's so funny.
I'm not, the guy's, anyway, we're introduced. Literally like an hour later, it's like,
That's it.
we knew.
Wow.
You know, it was a lot of tequila, a lot of beer involved, but
That always helps.
it was game on.
That's amazing.
So that's the story of how we met. Yeah.
Cool. What a cool, and I didn't know that story at all. And so you guys get married, you said in 2001?
Got married in 01.
Wow.
And I go a month after 9/11,
Oh.
which was like a lot of because my family being from New York, a lot of people didn't want to come, didn't want to fly at the time. So it was smaller wedding than it was supposed to be, but still, you know, married in Newport Beach, you know?
Yeah.
You can't
Super cool.
Can't do too much wrong there.
No, that's awesome. It's awesome. All right, well, let's talk about it. So, well, first, just because we're talking about Shannon, we're going to talk about the family and the boys, but I just want to give kudos. Shannon's also an incredible artist. And, you know, growing up with someone, you never know. Like, there's just so many things and a lot of years, but she's so talented. It's just super cool. M Street artwork. Great follow, very surfy, kitschy, very, very cool. A lot of it around town in hotels and the Lido House, et cetera. Very, very cool. So kudos to her on that. Let's talk about the boys. So, and this is like the boys and the family. So you've got two boys, Spencer and Chad. You guys live down by the Wedge. These kids are incredible watermen. They're both, we can talk about their current exploits, but I remember them growing up, like they grew up at the Wedge, right? Talk about that. Like the Wedge, for me growing up here, the Wedge was like, I have no interest in the Wedge. It's so far beyond my skill and ability, but you guys live down there and your boys started there when they were little. So I always think of it for the surf analogy, like John Florence grows up at pipe and he becomes like the best pipe surfer, one of the best in the world. Like your boys, it's like home, seems like home away from home. Talk about that and your, like the family role at the Wedge culture down there.
Yeah, it's so amazing. I mean, we're first of all so fortunate that we ended up down there. I mean, there was a lot of happenstance to that too, and it was literally when I met Shannon, she's like, "I'm never living in the peninsula. I don't want to live in that, you know,
the scene,
just the
or the traffic or whatever."
Yeah, just all that, and I convinced her to move down there. We found an amazing house down by the Wedge where we still are and everything, you know, so that's how we got there. There's a bigger story behind that, but just lucky. I mean, it was a whole bunch of things had to line up for us to make it there. And so we end up there, both kids are born there. And then to your question about the Wedge, I mean, what an incredible neighborhood. It's the neighborhood I kind of secretly wish I had growing up. I mean, again, I'm not going to trade my upbringing for anything, but just when that's your backyard, I mean, it's almost like it's just calling, it's just pulling you, it's sucking you in. And it was, the boys didn't take to it right away. I mean, we were on the beach all the time with them growing up. And I think the key was we got them in the water really early, got them comfortable in the water really early. And they took to the water, you know, very naturally. And because, you know, if you're going to get comfortable at a place like the Wedge, you got to be really comfortable in the water, and you got to know
big time
the ocean and everything about it. And so I think that helped, just that, you know, that early push. And and there was a lot of days where you're like, oh my God, you know, Shannon's on the beach going, "Are you kidding me? You're letting them out in this stuff?" We go, "They'll be fine." But that was kind of the foundation that got them to where they are today in the water. But in the middle of all that is there are different friend groups being pulled, you know, am I going to go play baseball, or am I going to be a water polo player, or am I, you know, and there was some, you know, few moments in time where that was the competing force to the beach lifestyle. And I remember, you know, nothing against organized soccer for 5 and 6 year olds, but I'm like, I remember one morning when because everybody was doing it, we were doing it, and I'm like sitting there going, what are we doing here? They don't want to be here. They're just here because their friends are here. So it didn't last long. So my point is, they kind of quickly sort of gravitated towards the group, you know, the friend group that was going to the beach every day.
Gotcha.
And that, you know, that was the start of it. And I, it wasn't as a parent, the last thing you want to do is push your kids too hard one direction because they'll probably go the other direction.
For sure.
And so it was, just I would take them to, everybody in Newport learned to surf at Blackie's, right, at some point in their life. So that was our routine,
Newport Pier.
Newport Pier, and then, go to City Donut for donuts afterwards. And even that was just kind of a slow push, see if it took. And then, sure enough, they ended up loving it. And it's, and then, back to the wedge, you start, there's a pecking order there. And when you show up for the first time, it's super intimidating. And they integrated well, got to know the spot first of all, and then, got comfortable, got to know the people, the characters. I mean, the people there are amazing. I mean,
characters is a good word.
The characters,
yeah.
All the food groups from the body surfers to the the skims, the bugs. I mean, just it's so cool to watch. I mean, I'm not a wedge surfer, but I will watch that wave all day long. It never gets old.
Yeah. I mean, growing up here, we would watch it, but it was the domain of the hardcore body surf and bugs. That was it. Sometimes you would see the guys like the Danny Quacks come out and surf it. Not a lot, but it's become so popular and it's heavy. And you really have to, the way that your boys grew up in it, again, you started young, worked their way up, the pecking order and all that is the way that you need to do it, because people go down there without any knowledge, and it's a scary, very risky endeavor.
Yeah, and
for sure.
And that's
life-threatening.
I didn't grow up there. I never, I've surfed the wedge a handful of times, but not nearly, like it's done today. But I didn't have that knowledge.
Yeah.
They learned it for themselves. I mean, I gave them the knowledge I had of just ocean in general, and how to get comfortable and be safe in the ocean and respect it. But they worked their way, they figured it out.
Yeah. They're great surfers and water beyond just surf. So talk about, they both have these really rad different kind of focuses or in the water. Talk about what Spencer and Chad are doing today in the water. There's a lot.
Yeah, no, it's been so fun to watch and just see the how it's progressed and where the quick story is Spencer's they both competed, but Spencer's more kind of the soul surfer, more loves to get barreled, doesn't really want to compete, although competitive, but there's that difference between competing and really competing.
Sure.
Have the killer be killed mentality. And I think he learned, he did great. They both surfed for Newport Harbor and both did great. But I think that was enough for Spencer, but he's just now such an accomplished. I watch him surf with him. It's like the kid can find a barrel in anything. And it's just amazing to watch. And they're both in San Diego, so he's surfing much better waves, by the way, down there.
So they're both at what school?
Both at Point Loma.
It's the best surf school
That's insane.
there is.
I'll get to that in a second. But then, on the other hand, Chad, great surfer too, but he took to skimboarding, and he's now, this is his fourth year on the skim tour as a pro, and has been in the top 10. Was his rookie year, he was in the top 10, and has been sort of top 5 or 6 the last couple of years. And just, that sport is, not knowing much about skimboarding and really seeing it, as we've lived in Newport. Just incredible. I actually think, and I think the surfers and the bugs will probably get mad at me, but I think the skimboarders at Wedge have the advantage.
Really?
If you see them, if you watch them on a side wave.
Oh, it's incredible.
They could get on it earlier. If you connect one, you're the longest ride.
Yeah.
It's just what they're doing is just insane at the
well,
wedge.
And without going full surf skim nerd, wedge nerd on it, but the skill sets you have to both surf the wedge well when it's big and barreling is super high. To skim it or skim well anywhere at the level he is unbelievable. And it seems like Chad came kind of out of nowhere. It seems like he picked up skim pretty late, because all of a sudden I'm seeing him competing. I'm just seeing this on social media and stuff, and I'm like, I didn't even know he was skimming, and he was ripping. And it's just, if you don't watch this stuff, you should. It is incredible to watch what Chad and his buddies are doing, and all these, you know, the Austin Keens and all these Blair Conklins, these incredible, I mean, these are incredible watermen. They can ride if you can skim, you can ride any craft.
Yeah. And the wipeouts are that much worse. I mean, it looks so cool. I mean, for guys like us to try and start skimming, forget it. I mean, the risk reward it's not worth it. And I mean, you're right. I mean, what these guys are in Chad, when they both started out, I mean, both boys were skimming from an early age, and Spencer kind of was doing more of it, and Chad kind of dropped, and then it flip-flopped. And it was really during the pandemic when I think Chad picked it up again and really ran with it. And, you know, we live in skim, you know, the skim capital of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, Laguna and the peninsula is, you know, the birthplace of skimboarding, and just that's what made, you know, if I have any regrets, I wish I had learned to skim early, you know, learn to skim, period, because you can skim pretty much any day of the year.
Yeah.
You know, surfing, you're waiting for waves, but what those guys are doing,
it's awesome.
is just
both your
super
kids
fun to watch.
Watching the boys is super impressive. How cool is it to have them both in the same school, Point Loma and Nazarene, down in San Diego?
The Nasbos.
The Nasbos. I've not heard that one.
Well, first to answer your question, again, Shannon and I are like high-fiving each other. How did we get so lucky to, one, their drive away, just far enough, but not too close. And same school, same schedule. I mean, that part of it, I mean, it just takes, you know, if you have kids that are going to school across the country or flight away or whatever, but then the setting, just insane. I mean, if you've never been to
Sunset Cliffs area,
that area is just, I mean, I'm jealous for sure. And, you know, I think it was Chad that said, you know, after he was there for a couple of months, it's like, Dad, the waves in Newport suck compared to what we have out front. I mean, out front there's 4 or 5 great waves. There's some waves there that are, you know, that are heavily, very local. And just, you know, the videos that I've seen of those guys, what they're doing down there, I mean,
yeah.
By the way, guys, you are at school. You need to maintain. Don't blow yourself up. You got a pretty good gig, you know. So, but yeah, there's a great there. I mean, the Point Loma surf team is like, you know, been national champions almost every year. I mean, it's the success they've had is insane.
Well, what percentage, and your kids probably included, what percentage of the kids that go there are there first because of proximity to good surf, second for the education, or, you know, you have a lot of Hawaiians that have always historically gone to that school. A lot of surf. I mean, it is a surf-focused school. You have to deal with the religion aspect of it, but the benefit is you're on the cliff in front of, as you said, world class. Maybe not world class, but outstanding surf year round, primarily in winter.
There's definitely some people that the kids that are there for different reasons. Like you said, yeah, it is a faith-based school, so you have that element, and you have kind of a little bit of both. You know, some people that are there just, you know, for that, but also for the education. And I think the other is just more kids just looking for an education, and then part of that group is the surfing community, because our boys are hanging out with all these Hawaiian kids from, you know, either Oahu or, you know, one of the other islands, and that's like it's become a thing for the Hawaiians. I mean,
it was the same way
get off island and get an education and still maintain your surfing, and so that was, we didn't know that going into it, but I mean I found SC because of a hot recruiter. These guys Googled the best surfing schools, and Point Loma popped up. I never even heard of the school. And by the way, it's probably one of the few schools in the state of California that you can actually get into. Mm-hmm. I mean, state school, USC, UCLA, you can't get into the UC schools. No. And it's a shame. We're paying for, our taxes are paying for these schools, and our kids can't even go there.
That's a whole nother absolutely. Yeah, you can't get that.
Insane.
When I first heard that San Diego State, because I went to University of San Diego, when I heard that San Diego State had become one of the hardest schools to get into in the state, I'm like, oh, all the educate, like they must have totally changed their program. It must be this incredible education. No, it's exactly the same. It's a huge party school. It's the same thing as it always was. It's just they're unless you're in San Diego, if you're a San Diego resident, you have a likelihood of getting in. The rest of the state, no way. 4.5 students aren't getting in. So it's terrible.
Since when is it more than 4.0? You know, it's like now it's 4.5. It's just, yeah, you're right. It's a conversation for another time.
But back to Point Loma. So even when I was in school in San Diego, it was known for the same thing. Lots of Hawaiians would go to school there. We'd go out, surf out in front, but go, God, what would it be like to go to school right there? I mean, it's really incredible. Yeah. It's fun. Really, really fun. Last thing on the boys, well, maybe not the last thing. As a family, you guys have done a lot. You guys travel a lot. You talked about it formatively with you and your family growing up with your folks. You guys do a lot of travel, and there's been one destination, at least one, that I know that you have gotten to quite a bit. Mm-hmm. What do you guys like to do?
Yeah, no, I said it earlier. I mean, we as a family, I mean, Shannon and I are on the same page. It's like life experiences are invaluable. I mean, the memories you can create. Whether you're, road trip into Mammoth or, Palm Springs, I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be an international trip somewhere. It's just the family unit on a trip, no distractions. I mean, it's just
magic.
There's so much good that comes from that. And so, as I grew up, as Shannon grew up traveling a ton, it's like it was a natural for us to want to do the same thing. And so we've been fortunate to go. I mean, our trips are either surf destinations or ski destinations for the most part. And we've been fortunate to travel to really cool places to surf. I mean, I think you're getting at Fiji. Yeah. Done Fiji almost too many times to count. And just a magical place. I mean, fortunate to be to go to Tavareo a few times. And once you go there, it's like the bar, you're ruined because it's. I mean, and if you go, I was first at Tavareo like in the mid '90s when it was a surf camp, and wasn't nearly as popular as it is today. But to the credit of Tavareo, it's like all the early clientele. We were single, scrapping, living together, and then everyone got married, got real jobs, started a family, but still wanted to go back, but didn't necessarily want the rustic surf camp. So, there's a lot of people that would probably disagree, but they knew their audience, and they upgraded the facility. It's not cheap to go there now, but it's an amazing experience, and they've just they cater to the people that go there. Every trip I've been there, it's like people have been there 15, 20 times.
It's amazing.
So it's
super cool.
Magical. We've been to all over Central America, Mexico. One of the craziest trips we did was the Maldives, on a boat. Convinced Shannon to spend a week and a half on a boat. But just, I mean, great waves, but just great memories.
So awesome.
We're so lucky to, the ocean has given us, so much happiness, and just, just to have everybody, the whole family, loves the ocean. And we're just like, how often does that happen when you have, mom is good with it, all the kids are good with it, dad's good with it. It's just, we're lucky.
Yeah.
Super
awesome.
Lucky how that worked out.
So cool. I love that. And I've always heard, like, we've talked over the years about exactly that. It's really neat. You also, just last thing on travel and sports, like, if I recall, you do some badass, super fun, big ski thing every year. What's that? What do you do?
A place we spend a lot of time in the winter is Whistler, up in British Columbia. And my parents discovered it, 30 years ago. I mean, before Whistler was Whistler. And so we've been traveling there. I mean, we own a house there. They bought a long time ago. So we've got this destination we can go to. And so Whistler has this amazing tradition. It's a race. It's a local race there called the Peak to Valley, which is it's touted as the longest GS, giant slalom course in the world. So it goes from the very top of Whistler, about 7,500 feet, to the very base of Whistler. If you're a skier, you'll know what this means, but 180 GS gates. A typical GS course is maybe 40, 45. And
so that's 180 gates.
180 turns you have to make.
Oh my God.
And it's anywhere between a 5 and 6 mile course.
How long does that take
And
you?
it takes, I mean, the top guys in the world, we're talking ex-national team, they're doing it in sub 5 minutes. I mean, my fastest time was maybe 6 minutes.
That's fast.
And then,
Hold on. How do your legs feel after that? I can't imagine.
you can't imagine because you're so spent. I mean, it's probably one of the physically, I mean, besides the bend, or the prone paddling, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
We will.
This was probably the most grueling endurance that I've experienced prior to that. And you're basically, you have to be on for 6 minutes. And the cool thing about this race is it's a team event. So it's four-person teams. Oh. Everybody's got to finish. So if one person on the team blows up and DNFs, then the whole team is disqualified.
So, and then it's the total, the average score or average speed. Or average time. When you're doing it that 6 minute range, what's your average speed over that 5 or 6 miles? Do you know?
Hard to say because you've got to make turns.
Sure.
So, but there's spots where you can tuck. So it's not like you're going 70 or 80 kilometers. You're probably going 40 or 50.
Still, that's freaking gnarly.
In some parts of it. But just, when you finish, I mean, there's the euphoria of coming across the finish line and just, it's like I said, it's such a community event. I know we've talking about community. Yeah. I mean, it's just such a cool old
How long have you been doing it?
I think this last year was 20 or 21.
Wow. So rad. Yeah. I love that. It's so cool.
It's such an amazing event. And just like, every year you're kind of like, okay, can I do this still? It's like you always talk about train for life. It's one of those things that, okay, if I can still do this, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I think that'll walk us right into the prone thing that you were just mentioning. But I mean, you are super fit and you've always stayed fit. And I think you wouldn't be able just to go up every year and do that event if you weren't. You have to be on. Like, you can't just show up and do that or you're going to blow up, right? And so you're coupling surf travel. You got to be ready to go do surf travel if you want to take advantage of that. And it's a good combination. It explains why you and your wife and your kids are also fit. So let's talk about it. So we talked about the boys and their water exploits. I tapped on it, but let's talk about prone paddling. Why don't you tell the story about Spencer getting into prone and then where that's gone with your family?
Yeah, and I thank you too. You're partially responsible for this story too. But yeah, Spencer he got into it 4 or 5 years ago, but didn't start getting serious about it until probably 2 summers ago. Did the bend 8.0.
And we've talked about it here, but the bend is a 30-mile prone paddle from Avalon to Newport Beach Pier in support of the Ben Carlson Foundation here in Newport.
Right, you're right. But then he's gotten more serious about it, and just last summer finished the Catalina Classic, which is the Super Bowl of prone race. And I'm learning. I'm less than a year into the prone world, but learning, and I do know that is like the race.
That's it.
And I was fortunate to be on the support boat for him. Both Shannon and I were on the support boat, and just to see that event up close and personal, man, is incredible. I mean, first of all, the logistics of these races is harder than the freaking paddle.
I've said that forever. Yep,
I mean,
for sure.
That's like, man, everything that goes into these things it's more stressful on the captain and the crew than it is, the paddler. But that was, leaving getting to 2 harbors, leaving in the morning, 2 harbors in Catalina, ends at Manhattan Beach, and then being, starting at dawn and just watching, going 5 miles an hour, 6 miles an hour across the channel, but watching your paddler, your son endure, this incredible accomplishment, and then all the setbacks, the accomplishments along the way. I mean, this particular race, he crushed the first 20 miles. After the 20 miles, he was like, we're looking at the app and seeing he's freaking top 20. And then, but he didn't eat enough nourishment, didn't do what you need to do as a prone, to do these types of prone races. And like mile 20 before the L10 crashed.
Hit the wall.
And, that's when your motivation skills, your fatherly, it's like, you're going to get through this, dude. We loaded him up with turkey sandwiches, cranked the radio, just try to get his mind in a better place. Yeah. And like 10 minutes later, he snapped out of it, the pain cave, and finished. He finished, I think he was 45 or 46. He was, top half for his first race when he finished. And
that's awesome.
I mean, that was, I'll get choked up talking about it, because when he passed the finish line, I'm like, dude, that's insane. And you're on the boat, you're not even on the beach, so you're seeing it from a distance. It was like one of the most proud moments.
So rad.
For us,
Congrats.
Man.
I love that. That race is very special to me. That I have a long history in that, and I love nothing more than seeing people finish it for the first time. The Bend is not dissimilar, but the Bend is a stepping stone for a lot of people to the Classic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a race. The Bend's a paddle. We'll talk about the Bend in a minute, but the Classic is an all-out race, and it's a different animal. And, as a big surf family, like, you can do the history of all the world-class surfers, the history of surf, the Greg Knowles of the world. They all did that channel. They started the Catalina Classic in the 50s. So there's a huge legacy there, and it's just a huge accomplishment. So I love your boys, and I know Spencer better than I know Chad, but it makes me so happy. He's such a good guy to see him crush that. It's a huge ego thing. Not ego thing. It's a huge confidence and pride thing to do that. Yeah. So congrats to him. But there's more to it, because it left a mark on you too, which inspired you to do some stuff. What did that do?
Yeah, I mean, I saw him paddle the Bend 8.0. I was on his support boat, and that was 2 years ago, and I saw that, and I literally was on the, told the captain, like, I'm doing this next year. I'll regret it if I don't. I mean, the event, you got to remember, this is an event that honors the legacy of Ben Carlson, who I never knew, but just, such an amazing human from what I've, all the stories I've heard, and just what he stood for in the community. And so I think that was really the part of it. I mean, I wanted to be a part of that. And, the personal accomplishment of paddling the channel was secondary. But just seeing that race up close, I'm like, I got to do it. So fast forward to this year, and like April-ish, I get on the phone with you. What kind of board? I'm going to pull the trigger, Mark. What kind of board should I get? So you were great to sort of counsel me through the world of prone boards, and ended up getting a board, and then start training, and committed to do the Bend 9.0. And I wasn't training with anybody really except Spencer, so it was kind of a solo. I was figuring stuff out by my solo, and there was a race on Father's Day called the El Morro Classic, 15-miler from NAC down to El Morro and back. And Spencer he was signed up for it, and I knew some other people that were signed up, and I'm like, was thinking about it, and it's probably too soon, but as we got closer and I got more confident on the board, I'm like, I just got to do this. I'll just cruise. I'll just stop every few miles, eat, and I just need to experience what this is going to be like. And I'd done a 15-mile paddle, so I knew what that felt like, but I'd obviously never done a race. So the day of, we show up, start at the starting line, gun goes off. Everyone, there's 130 people, I think, in the race. And I'm like, I'm not going to sit in the back and chill. It's the competitive juices took over. I'm like, screw this, man. I'm going for it. And as it turns out that day, as you know, because you were there, there was a nasty south wind. So as soon as you got out of the harbor, it was like game on. Yeah. And you were taking waves in the face the whole time. But yeah, at that point, I know so little about the sport. Couldn't get on my knees. Didn't have the right nutrition. ran out of water, paddled the whole thing prone, and I finished, I respectable. I was like, I don't even know where I'm going to finish, but I finished, in the top half.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah,
top
you look
half
strong.
of my
I was out there.
category.
You super strong out there.
But when I got to the finish line, I was like, I couldn't have paddled another stroke because I was so spent. But that was like, okay, I can do this. The bend, I just got to, cobble together another, 10, 15 miles and I'll be good. And, so the trained the rest of the summer and was ready. And then, the bend was, that's a whole nother, such an amazing experience. Just, being a part of the planning, the community, all the qualifying races, getting to know, all the characters that are involved in this thing. Kudos to Spencer, Purdy, and of course you guys, just for putting on that event. It's 100 paddlers in the middle of Catalina Channel. What can go wrong?
The list is long, and we're very aware of all of them for sure. But listen, I'm super proud of you. I was so stoked to watch you do it and to be able to do it with Spencer. Talk about that. Talk about doing it, finishing it, and doing it with Spence and with Shannon on the boat.
Yeah, it was. You've had a lot of people on here talk about the bend, and I think the first 10 miles. My quick bend story. The first 10 miles were the hardest because it was cold.
Yeah.
The conditions were, wasn't crazy, but it was just cold, and I was prepared for everything but being, because we, all summer was, it was a nice, it wasn't a cold summer, so I think the second break, Shannon looked at me and goes, "You're blue." Like I was like, I could not get my cord got to the point where I was freezing. Like if something doesn't change, that was probably the closest to my pain cave moment on the trip or on the paddle. And midway, the third break, the classic 15-mile break where everyone circles up and Spencer speaks on behalf, on the foundation and talks about, Ben, you're supposed to dive down. And I'm sitting there so freaking cold. Like, sorry, Ben, I'm not diving down because I am so freaking cold right now. And so literally right after that break, the sun came out.
Yeah.
It's like divine freaking intervention.
Yeah.
And the rest of the way across was, I don't want to say it was easy, but it was much more pleasurable because the sun was out. It actually got hot. I'm like, okay,
it got
now
glassy. It got beautiful
glassy.
second half. Yeah, you guys earned it for the first 10 to 12 for sure.
That was, the first half sucked, but the second half was much more pleasurable. And then, we got to, I'd seen the bend the year before, and I'm like, what was missing from the support boat was when you're half a mile out, all waiting for everyone to catch up, we got to have a beer together.
Yeah.
And so I had told our captain, I'm bringing Modelo's on the boat. When we get to the half mile, the quarter mile out break, start throwing them to the boys. So we all huddled up, had a couple beers, and then it's like, Spencer's like, okay, let's charge the beach. And just sitting there for reflecting. We've all talked about it, reflecting what you just accomplished, and then for an amazing cause and for a great human. Was just insane. And then you go to and that's not even the best part of it. Then you go to the beach and there's 300 people.
No, there's 1,000 people there.
Whatever it is,
Packed.
that you don't
fantastic.
even, I didn't know 95% of them, but they're high-fiving you, welcoming you home. And that was, I still, my memory of the beach is so foggy because it's like there's this range of emotions that, euphoria that you finished, just the people that are greeting you and the reason why you did what you did and all the training. And then the icing's like hugging Spencer on the beach. And then what's his name with the mic finds us. And it's like, I had no words to even speak to the guy. I'm like, what are you doing? What is this? But it was just that part of it. If there's a person, there's so many reasons to do it, but the ending was just insane.
John, it was really cool for me to watch you paddle it this year and watch you. I saw all those emotions on you at the finish, like you with Spencer and all the boys. We know so many people that paddle it. it was really cool for me to watch that with you. So
That was
kudos
special,
and
man.
congrats.
And it's like 10.0, man. As long as I'm able, I mean, I'm in.
Oh, I think you're able. Well,
Yeah.
and the fun part is now your wife's all got the bug, and she's on a prone board now, which is incredible. So
I mean, I would have bet you my house that there's no chance Shannon would ever have been on a prone board. And as you know, we just did a 4-miler last night for a Halloween version of Wet
Yeah.
Wednesday, and she
was
did. It
on
was
it.
the longest she's been on it, and
so fun to
so
watch.
it's
really cool.
who knows? Could be a family affair.
It's outstanding.
Next September.
Well, listen, John, before we wrap this up, the one thing I really want to get to now wraps all of the water and ocean exploits and everything you guys do. Obviously, it's a passion of the whole family. It's Surfrider, and you've been a huge part of the Surfrider Foundation in Orange County for a long time in a leadership position. You organize events. You've been instrumental in beach cleanups for probably a dozen years or more. You'll fill us in. I know you're involved with the national group, like the people. Talk about your role in the Surfrider and why.
Yeah. How much time do we have?
A few minutes.
Yeah. No. I'll make it brief. I mean, Surfrider, first of all, the mission is dedicated to protecting the world's ocean, waves, and beaches. And we're 40 years old this year. So it started in 1984, a group of 6 guys. Not a lot of people know the origin, but the name Surfrider starts from the first activation of these 6 original founders at Surfrider Beach in Malibu.
Oh.
There was a development there that was going to threaten the wave. And these guys were all locals, banded together, took action and prevented the development from happening, saved the wave. I mean, not a lot of people know that story,
I
but
didn't know that.
that's
No.
where Surfrider began. And then from there, it was, let's just grow this thing to do exactly what our mission calls for, and that's protecting the ocean, waves, and beaches. And so it's, fast forward to today, and, I've been involved for about 10 years now. There's so many reasons why, but as we've been talking about, I mean, the ocean is such a big part of my life and has afforded, my family so many amazing memories. And it's like, it's a part of us. It's part of all of us. And by the way, the world can't survive without a healthy ocean. But about 10 years ago, I think, I was at a point in my life where, what can I do to give back? Sort of raised with this mantra, like, get involved, make a difference, and give back. And like, what am I passionate about? Obviously the ocean. So Surfrider, I got introduced to a couple of people there, got to know the model. I mean, the model at Surfrider is really cool because it's local grassroots chapters like what I'm involved with here in Orange County, and then this national level that tackles more national issues. I mean, Surfrider is known for, mostly known for its beach cleanup events, but there's so much more that Surfrider
On
does.
the legal side and the activist side, big time.
Big time. And on the active side, so I, never thought of myself as an environmental activist. And I think that's I don't even know if I consider myself that. I'm more an advocate for the environment. And the term activist, environmental activist it gets these negative, people have their opinions about it. And it's like, we have one planet, one ocean. It's like, if we don't take care of this, man, there's no plan B. And 10 years ago, I'm like, I want to try and leave this place a little better for everybody, including my family. So what can I, what can I hitch my wagons to that's going to allow me to do that? And Surfrider was the model that, I looked at a lot of different organizations. And this is the one that's going to be able to make the best, the most impact, because it's tangible. What you do locally is really what's going to drive change. I mean, to try and turn the bus around at the federal level, forget about it.
Right.
So we've done a lot of stuff that people don't really understand or don't know about with Surfrider, is that we are behind the scenes working with our elected officials to actually try and change policy that's going to prevent kind of some of the issues from happening in the first place. I mean, my biggest, I think, one of our biggest focuses here in North Orange County is plastic pollution. in just the fight against single-use plastic. And it's not like I'm not the guy that's gonna be waving the flag on City Hall. It's like, I just want to interact with people, engage with people, and make them more aware. I mean, that's the awareness piece is ingrained in every level of Surfrider. I mean, that's really the model in a nutshell, is raise awareness. And once you're more aware, then you're re-educated, then you can actually decide how I can get involved and make a difference. And it doesn't have to be doing what I'm doing. And, you know, at that level, it can be simple behavioral changes that you can do, you know, as a family.
Like what? Give one or two
So
examples.
again, on the side of plastic pollution, I mean, we're both holding, you know, reusable coffee cups. I mean, what people don't understand is there's 350 million metric tons of plastic waste generated every year in the world. Half of that's single use.
350
million
million metric
tons.
tons a year. And half is
Half
single
is
use.
single use. US 70 to 75 million tons of plastic waste is generated. US is the biggest producer of plastic waste in the world per capita. People think, okay, it's all these third world countries, developing countries that are the problem. We are a big part of the problem. And then you look at, okay, what we've been taught or really brainwashed about is you just take your plastic bottle and throw it in the recycling bin and it magically gets recycled. It doesn't. So out of that 73 million tons of waste generated, 5% is recycled.
Yeah, I've heard 5 and 6.
It's used to be 10, but our answer to recycling was to ship it to other countries for them to dispose it. So that 5% now, that policy is in place now that prevents that. So it's now 5 or 6%. And so you look at 5 or 6% is the amount recycled, and then you have 73 million tons. The rest is going to landfills.
Staggering.
Or the ocean. And a lot of it ends in the ocean. So back to your answer, not many people know this, and Surfrider and the state of California recently sued Exxon, who is the biggest producer of plastic, of the polymers that are used to make plastic products. And the reason that lawsuit is about the myth around recycling.
Yeah.
So behavior, again, change will start is much better started locally, because once you engage locally, once you start recognizing that it's a problem, you can make the individual changes. And as a community, it's like there's low-hanging fruit all around the community, any coastal community, to where the cities can be more vocal, they can be more forward-facing about better sustainability. I mean, our oceans and harbor are the lifeblood of Newport, the lifeblood of most coastal communities. And the fact that the city of Newport doesn't have a real plan around how to better get ahead of these problems. I mean, they're working on it. And I'm actually on a committee in the city, the Water Quality and Coastal Thailand Committee, which is a subcommittee of the city council to deal, so I'm on this committee that is helping sort of shape that movement. But there's a long way to go. And if we can't, again, if as individuals, there's so many ways we can advocate for change. And again, it starts with just simple behavior stuff. But you gotta be aware before you can actually take action. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest part of the problem, is people aren't aware. And once they are, and that's my mission. I mean, whenever I can engage with people at Surfrider and just, hey, do you understand, do you know, just be a little more aware, and then, from there, a lot of good can come from it.
Rad. Listen, John, I'm so glad we brought this up, because I'm just super grateful for your role in it. Building awareness is the key, the starting point. So thank you for doing that and being involved at the city level and at the community level. If people want to learn more about the Surfrider Foundation, what they're doing, and some of these maybe not easy, but those changes they can start to make, where would you direct them?
I mean, there's a lot of, Surfrider, the local chapters North Orange, Surfrider North Orange County. So we have a website. There's a lot of stuff. If you Google Surfrider North OC, you'll get there. But Surfrider has, and I'll wrap this up, but Surfrider has programs. Again, we're not necessarily known for this, and these are super popular programs, but we call them ocean friendly. So there's ocean friendly restaurants, ocean friendly hotels. And if you look at who the biggest offenders are of single-use waste, unfortunately, a lot of it comes out of restaurants with takeout, and a lot of it comes out of hotels. And so we've created this model that's basically a roadmap to sustainability. So the Ocean Friendly Restaurant Program, it's like, if you're a restaurant owner, this is the checklist. This is the way you can become more sustainable and basically eliminate single use out of your entire operation. We have alternatives. By the way, there's tons of good alternative products to plastic, which the plastic industry does not want you to know about. And so that we have that playbook, and so we're adding new restaurants all the time. And then a huge shout out to Lido House Hotel, because they just became an ocean friendly hotel, the first one in Newport.
Outstanding.
And it's like the entire hotel's operation is now sustainable. No single-use plastic on property. I mean, it's so simple to do, and if you're not going to get the government to make change, then you start at the bottom, bottom up sort of model. You get businesses to jump on board. That raises awareness. That gets the train out of the station, and then that puts pressure on local cities. Okay, this is what our constituents want, so we now need to start figuring this out. And in between, it's like, as individuals, get smarter, make changes, use this, and not plastic. I mean, I look at it very simply, but unfortunately, that's not the way most of the world looks at it. So until then, just going to keep fighting the fight. But
hallelujah.
Happy to, anybody has questions, reach out anytime. Cool. You and I talk about it all the time, but Surfrider North OC.
Right on. John, thank you so much. I would love to go further and deeper into it. And I just want to acknowledge, again, your role in this, and also you and your family's role in the community as far as your engagement with the Ben Carlson Foundation, which we spoke about, and also the Newport Junior Guard program. You guys have been very, very supportive of that. And the building that's now down at headquarters down there, which is amazing. So thanks for all you guys do. Thanks for sharing the whole story. It's super cool, connecting all the dots. And dude, I just want to give you kudos. I think you're an amazing guy, a hell of a dad, and just a great community member. So thanks for all of it.
Oh, thanks for having me on. Yeah. These are a big seat to fill. You have so many amazing people here, and I hope this was interesting. And I love what you got, what you're doing. Is amazing too. Thank you for the kudos, but you're a big reason for all these stories. A lot of you is ingrained in a lot of the stories I told today. So
cool.
Thank you.
Super fun.
Right back at
I appreciate it. Thank you,
yeah,
buddy.
brother.
Thanks, pal.
Thanks, Ben.